Have you ever seen something so amazing?
Like a perfect rainbow or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like a perfect double rainbow stretching across the sky. Or maybe even just a tiny bright green frog hopping across your yard, and you instantly just had to shout, "You've got to see this."
Oh, yeah. You just can't keep it to yourself.
Right. Think about that feeling for a second, that pure, unfiltered urge to just grab whoever happens to be closest to you, even a total stranger, and share the wonder of what you're witnessing in real time.
It's a universal feeling.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you are here with us. Today, we are taking a really fascinating stack of sources anchored by a sermon from Pastor Philip Gibson.
Titled, Come and See When Grace Becomes a Witness.
Right? Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And at the center of his message is an ancient 2,000-year-old text from the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 4.
And our mission for this deep dive is to look at this material not just as a traditional theological study.
Right.
We really want to explore the anatomy of awe itself. We are going to examine how profound, life-altering ideas actually spread through human networks.
Which is such a cool way to frame it.
Yeah, it is. And to really understand the mechanics of this ancient text and how it applies to the way we share transformational experiences today, we're going to look through some incredibly diverse lenses. We'll touch on 18th century English history, dive into the psychology of modern astronauts, and unpack some cutting-edge sociology.
It is a rich tapestry, and it reveals a startling amount about human nature.
It really does.
Okay, let's unpack this. Most of us probably know the basic setup of John 4. It's high noon, the sun is blazing, and Jesus is resting at Jacob's well.
Right. There's the Samaritan city of Sychar.
Yeah. And he's exhausted from his journey. His disciples have gone off to the city to buy food, leaving him completely alone, and a Samaritan woman approaches to draw water.
So the stage is set.
Exactly. We don't need to rehash the entire sequence of events, but what Pastor Gibson points out is the sheer number of invisible social tripwires. Jesus crosses the moment he opens his mouth and says, "Give me a drink."
What's really fascinating here is how that single, seemingly mundane request just shatters a complex web of cultural norms.
Right, because the context is huge.
Huge. First, there is this massive historical and cultural barrier. Jews and Samaritans had centuries of deep-seated political and religious hostility.
It wasn't just a slight disagreement.
No, the tension stretched back generations. It was rooted in bitter disputes over where and exactly how God should be worshipped. The text even explicitly notes a little later that Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans, so to even acknowledge her presence was crossing a massive line.
And beyond the ethnic and religious divide, there's a serious gender and social dynamic at play, too. A Jewish rabbi speaking publicly to a woman, particularly a woman drawing water alone at noon, which strongly hints at a marginalized social position that was just unheard of. Jesus is completely ignoring the established rules of engagement for his era.
And the woman is acutely aware of this. I mean, her immediate reaction is shock. She says, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?"
Right. She calls it out immediately.
He does. And Jesus responds by pivoting from the literal water in her bucket to a metaphor. He tells her that if she knew who she was talking to, she would ask him for living water.
But she is understandably skeptical. I mean, she points out he doesn't even have a bucket and the well is deep. She even challenges him a bit, asking if he thinks he's greater than their ancestor Jacob, who built the well in the first place.
This is where the well itself shifts from a place of just daily, exhausting chores to a place of sudden revelation.
How so?
Well, historically in the Old Testament, wells were deeply symbolic locations. They were places where divine encounters happened, where futures were altered, covenants were forged. Jesus tells her that physical water just leads to being thirsty again, but the living water he offers becomes a spring gushing up to eternal life.
So it's a metaphor for the life of God continuously flowing into the human experience.
Exactly.
Okay, so if she's intrigued by this living water, how do we get to the massive turning point of the story? Because the conversation suddenly takes a very sharp, very personal turn here.
It does, and Pastor Gibson's sermon outlines this brilliant framework for understanding the pivot. He identifies a universal four-step pattern of transformation within this narrative.
Let's walk through those.
Step one is disruption. Ordinary life just has to be interrupted for real change to happen. The woman came for a routine chore, but her reality is entirely disrupted when Jesus suddenly tells her to go call her husband.
And she says she has no husband, which leads to Jesus revealing that he knows she has had 5 husbands, and the man she is currently with is not her husband.
Right.
Just imagine that for a second. Being completely seen, your entire complex, messy history just laid completely bare by a total stranger at a well.
It's wild. And that intense vulnerability leads right into step 2 in the pattern and new perspective. She instantly recognizes she is dealing with someone extraordinary. She calls him a prophet.
She starts seeing the world completely differently.
Yes. Which leads her to bring up that ancient, deep-seated debate between their people about where true worship should actually happen, on the Samaritan mountain or in Jerusalem.
But Jesus elevates the entire concept of worship. He says the time is coming when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, essentially bypassing the whole geographic debate entirely.
Right.
And then, when she mentions the coming Messiah, Jesus drops the ultimate reveal. He says, I am he, the one who is speaking to you.
Boom.
Yeah. So if disruption and a new perspective are the first 2 steps, where does her mind go next?
It moves to step 3, a reevaluation of priorities. The text includes this subtle but incredibly beautiful detail. She leaves her water jar behind at the wall. Oh, wow.
Yeah, the very thing she came for, her primary objective for the entire day, is suddenly entirely secondary.
Which perfectly sets up step 4, a shift toward meaning or service. She literally runs back to the city to tell everyone. She becomes a witness.
And this is the core of the anatomy of awe. We have to ask why she left the water jar and ran back to a town where she was likely ostracized in the first place.
Because awe overrides our natural human instinct for self-preservation.
Exactly. It overrides social conformity.
That really reminds me of the modern analogy Pastor Gibson uses in his sermon, the one about the children with the frog we mentioned earlier.
It's a great comparison.
It is, because when a child makes a new discovery, they don't quietly internalize it. Wonder just naturally overflows. They are compelled to become a witness to that joy. But let's elevate that a bit, because we aren't just talking about a child's fleeting excitement here. We are talking about an adult fundamentally altering their entire worldview.
Right. And to understand the sheer weight of that kind of worldview shift, the sermon brings in a stunning example from modern times. Astronauts returning from the International Space Station.
Oh, I love this part.
When reporters ask these astronauts what it's actually like to look at Earth from orbit, they frequently describe something psychologists call the overview effect.
I have read a bit about this. From up there, they see this one fragile, beautiful blue sphere just floating in the vast darkness. They see the oceans, the swirling clouds, the continents, but they don't see borders.
No borders at all. And the overview effect is a profound cognitive shift. When astronauts view the planet as a single, interconnected system, without the arbitrary political lines we draw on maps, it fundamentally changes them as humans.
They come back down to Earth talking about protecting humanity as a whole, right?
Yes, they advocate for the planet. They realize how incredibly small and insignificant our human divisions are when you view the entire picture all at once.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here for just a second.
Go for it.
An astronaut seeing the whole globe from space is a massive, overwhelming visual stimulus. It makes total sense that their brain gets rewired by that. But the Samaritan woman just had a conversation by a dusty well. How do those two experiences actually equate neurologically?
That is a great question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism of awe is surprisingly similar, whether the trigger is visual or conversational.
Really?
Yeah. Awe happens when we encounter something so vast, whether it's physically vast, like the Earth from space, or conceptually vast, like the sudden realization of unconditional grace from a stranger who knows your darkest secrets, that our existing mental models just cannot accommodate it.
So the brain literally has to build a new framework.
Exactly. The woman at the well experienced a conceptual overview effect. The borders between Jew and Samaritan, righteous and marginalized, they just instantly vanished in the face of this living water.
That is incredibly powerful. And just like the astronauts, she spends the rest of her life, or at least the immediate future, telling everyone about it. She advocates. She becomes a witness to what she has seen. And the sources anchor this urge to witness in history, too. Let's look at the year 1738 in London. A young Anglican priest named John Wesley is at a small prayer meeting on Aldersgate Street.
Wesley is a fascinating parallel to all this. I mean, he was already a highly educated theologian. He had preached countless sermons. He'd even traveled across the Atlantic as a missionary.
He understood all the intellectual mechanics of his religion.
Completely. He had the vocabulary of faith completely mastered.
But knowing the mechanics is very different from having a personal encounter. During that meeting, someone was reading aloud from Martin Luther's commentary on faith, And Wesley later recorded in his journal that as he listened, he felt his heart strangely warmed.
Strangely warmed is such a famous phrase.
It is. For the very first time, he felt a sudden, profound assurance that he was personally loved and completely forgiven.
His faith moved from head knowledge to an authentic internal disruption. That singular, visceral moment transformed him from a mechanical theologian into a passionate witness.
He spent the rest of his life traveling on horseback, right? Preaching in open fields and telling people about grace.
Because when an experience is that real, the joy simply compels you to share it.
Okay, but this raises a massive question for me. We are talking about deeply personal, individual moments of awe here. John Wesley's warmed heart, the astronaut's view from the window, the woman at the well.
Right.
How do these isolated individual moments actually scale up to change an entire community?
But that takes us right back to the well in Sychar and to a really brilliant piece of modern sociology.
Let's hear it.
While the woman is running back to the city without her water jar, a subplot is actually unfolding at the well. The disciples finally return with the food, and they are absolutely astonished to find Jesus talking to this woman, though they don't dare question him about it.
They just urge him to eat.
Right. But Jesus tells them, "I have food to eat that you do not know about," explaining that his true nourishment is doing the will of the one who sent him. He then tells his disciples to look around, saying the fields are ripe for harvesting, and that they're going to reap what others have labored to sow.
So a harvest metaphor.
Exactly. And to understand how that harvest actually happens, how the woman's singular experience spreads to the whole town, Pastor Gibson's sermon introduces the work of sociologist Damon Centola.
Yes, specifically referencing his appearance on the Hidden Brain podcast.
Centola studies how beliefs and behaviors move through social networks.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Centola differentiates between how simple ideas spread versus how complex, life-altering ideas spread.
Right. Centola points out that simple ideas, think like a funny internet meme, a quick life hack, or basic news, those spread very quickly through what sociologists call weak ties.
So weak ties are like your casual acquaintances, the barista you see once a week, or the people you follow online but don't actually know in real life.
Exactly. You don't need a deep bond of trust to share a funny video.
But depth change, the kind of transformational change we are talking about today, requires a completely different network structure.
Centola calls it complex contagion. When a change requires a real cost, it rarely spreads through weak ties.
Makes sense.
Think about adopting a radically new moral framework, offering genuine forgiveness to someone who deeply wronged you, or demonstrating true humility. These behaviors are risky.
Wait, what is the actual cost for this town to believe the woman, though? I mean, they're just listening to a guy at a well. What are they actually risking?
They are risking their entire social and religious standing. For a Samaritan town to embrace a Jewish rabbi as the potential Messiah is borderline heresy in their cultural context.
Oh, I see.
Furthermore, they are being asked to entertain this massive theological paradigm shift based on the word of a woman who, given her history of 5 husbands, likely lived on the margins of their society anyway. The social cost of believing her and being wrong was incredibly high.
That makes perfect sense. They can't just take her word for it like a piece of casual gossip. They need social reinforcement.
Exactly. To adopt costly behaviors, people need the safety of strong ties. They need to see the behavior modeled and reinforced by trusted friends, family members, and close neighbors. The community basically has to move together to absorb the risk.
If we apply this complex contagion theory directly back to the ancient town of Sychar, the text maps onto the sociology flawlessly.
It really does.
The woman runs into the town and says, "Come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he?" Her testimony acts as the initial spark. It generates immense curiosity.
But notice that the townspeople do not immediately convert, just based on her words alone.
Right.
Her witness is the invitation, it's the disruption of their daily routine.
Right.
But they have to verify the cost for themselves.
So they leave the city and go out to the well. They listen to him. And the text says they actually ask Jesus to stay with them, and he stays in their town for 2 days.
This is a beautiful portrait of complex contagion in action. The community's strong ties are actively working together. They are experiencing this new reality collectively, sitting with Jesus for 2 days, discussing it, and reinforcing it for one another. And only after that immersive shared experience do they finally say to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is truly the Savior of the world."
So the individual transformation sparked the network, But the deep relationships within the community are what allowed the belief to truly take root and flourish.
Precisely.
That is such a powerful framework for understanding how movements are built. And it leads directly to the prophetic word Pastor Gibson gives toward the end of his sermon,
Right. He is speaking directly to his own congregation, Alexander Chapel.
which he openly acknowledges is a small church. The overarching message there is really about the micro origins of macro movements.
Think about it. We are analyzing the Gospel of John, a text written around 90 to 100 AD. The author states explicitly at the end of the book that it is a written testimony meant to spread belief to future generations. But massive world-changing movements do not start with massive crowds or sophisticated marketing campaigns.
Jesus started with just 12 disciples.
Right.
John Wesley, whose strangely warmed heart ended up changing the course of history and founding a massive global denomination, he started with very small, intimate societies of people just gathering in living rooms.
And the evangelization of an entire Samaritan city started with one single marginalized woman who held no formal power, no titles, and no authority.
The evidence across all these sources points to one really profound conclusion. The power of a movement is never measured by the number of people in the room at the beginning.
No, it is measured entirely by the courage and authenticity of its witnesses. A small group of people, or even just one person, who has experienced something profoundly real and is willing to absorb the social cost to say, come and see. That is the true engine of human change.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Whether you are looking at this through the lens of astronauts trying to share a radical new perspective of a borderless humanity, or through the deeply personal lens of sharing grace, mercy, and forgiveness in your own life, the principle remains exactly the same.
It does.
Deep, lasting change relies on your strong relationships. It relies on your willingness to simply and honestly share your disruptive experiences with the people who trust you most. You don't need to have a perfect theological explanation or a polished presentation to change the world around you. You just need to be willing to say, come and see.
It is a profound leveling of the playing field. Anyone, anywhere, regardless of their status or background, can be the catalyst for complex contagion within their own network.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started in an ancient Samaritan while in the blistering heat of the day, traveled all the way up to the International Space Station to look down at our fragile blue planet, walked the cobblestone streets of 18th century London with John Wesley, and unpacked the modern sociology of how human networks actually adopt costly change.
It's been quite the journey.
And through it all, the through line is crystal clear. Genuine transformation always starts with a personal encounter that is simply too powerful, too awe-inspiring to keep quiet.
As we wrap up this deep dive, there is a final, somewhat provocative thought I want to leave you with, something to chew on as you go about the rest of your week.
Let's hear it.
We learned today from sociologist Damon Centola that profound, costly changes require strong ties and deep community trust to actually spread. But think about the world you and I live in right now. We are immersed in a digital age where we are constantly, almost obsessively, building thousands of weak ties.
Like followers, superficial connections, passing interactions on feeds.
Exactly. And while we do that, we are often neglecting the cultivation of our strong ties. So if deep transformation truly requires strong, trusting relationships to take root, is our hyper-connected but increasingly superficial modern world actually losing the very infrastructure needed to spread life-changing ideas?
Wow, that is definitely something to think about. Are we building the right kinds of ties to share the things that actually matter most? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We love exploring these concepts with you. Stay curious, keep nurturing those strong ties in your life, and always keep seeking out your own moments of awe. We will catch you next time.